It started with the sound of a door exploding off its hinges. 3 cops stormed into a small apartment at midnight, flashlights cutting through the darkness, guns drawn, adrenaline high. They thought they were chasing a criminal. They thought they were doing their job. But in the 3 seconds of silence that followed the shout, "Police!" their entire world collapsed. Because hanging on that wall wasn't a weapon, or drugs, or guilt. It was a navy jacket with 4 golden letters, FBI. The woman they woke didn't scream. She didn't beg. She looked at them with the calm of someone who'd been waiting for this night. They believed they were arresting a suspect. They had no idea they had just walked straight into a federal trap, one set by an undercover agent who'd spent 15 years gathering proof of the corruption they represented. And tonight, for the first time, justice wasn't quiet anymore. The night had gone silent just seconds before the first strike. Somewhere down the quiet street, a dog barked, then stopped, as if it sensed what was about to come. 3 men in dark uniforms stood at the edge of the porch, breath fogging in the cold air. Lieutenant Carver raised a gloved hand. Now! The door shattered beneath the weight of his boot. The sound, wood splintering, metal locking pins snapping, ripped through the sleeping neighborhood. Flashlights cut the darkness like blades, sweeping across walls, furniture, and photographs that never asked to be witnesses. "Police! Search warrant!" Carver barked, his voice echoing off the hallway. But there was no paper in his hand, no signature from a judge, just a lie polished by routine. Behind him, Officer Reed's heart hammered louder than the radio static. It was his first raid under Carver's command. He'd been told they were after a suspected dealer, a noise complaint gone bad. Yet the house didn't look like trouble. Books lined the walls, framed diplomas glinted in the light. It smelled like lavender and coffee, not drugs. From the bedroom came the sound of someone gasping awake. Sheets rustled, footsteps thudded. Carver charged forward, pushing open the half-closed door. "Hands where we can see 'em," he shouted. A woman sat upright in bed, blinking against the glare. She looked disoriented but not frightened, her breathing steady, her eyes sharp. Amara Lewis, mid-30s, skin the color of deep bronze and calm carved from steel. She raised her hands slowly, fingers trembling more from disbelief than fear. "What is this?" she asked, voice hoarse from sleep. "Noise complaint." Carver snapped. "Possible narcotics." He waved Mendoza toward the dresser. Reed hesitated by the doorway, watching the woman's eyes, how they moved, tracking everything, memorizing faces. "You have the wrong house," she said. "Don't move," Mendoza warned, kicking open drawers. Clothes spilled onto the floor. Reed flinched at the sound of shattering glass when Carver swept a photo frame off the nightstand. The picture inside, a woman in a graduation robe shaking hands with someone in a suit, landed face down among the debris. Amara's voice stayed calm, almost clinical. "You're violating the Fourth Amendment." Carver laughed. "Lady, you can quote whatever you want after we're done here." Then something small slid off a chair near the closet and hit the floor with a soft clink. Reed turned his flashlight. A navy blue jacket had fallen from its hanger. Across its back, bold gold letters caught the beam. FBI. Time froze. The air itself seemed to pause. Mendoza's hand dropped away from his holster. Reed swallowed hard, whispering, "Sir, you need to see this." Carver's jaw flexed. He stepped forward, his light steady on the letters. "Could be fake," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Amara looked straight at him. "If it were fake, you'd already have proof in your hand." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Outside, wind brushed the broken door, carrying the faint hum of a city that had no idea what was happening inside this small apartment. Reed's flashlight trembled in his grip. He could feel the wrongness of it, how quiet guilt sounded when you hadn't earned it yet. Carver exhaled sharply, trying to regain command. "Search the place," he ordered. "We don't stop now." Mendoza hesitated. "Sir, I said keep going." Reed looked at Amara again. She hadn't lowered her hands, but there was something in her stillness, like a soldier waiting for a signal. Her gaze flicked toward the lamp in the corner. The bulb glowed faintly, though no switch had been touched. Carver began yanking open drawers in the living room. Reed followed reluctantly, his boots crunching over glass. Papers lay scattered on the floor. Legal briefs, some stamped with federal seals. "She's a lawyer or something," Reed murmured. "She's a problem," Carver said. Back in the bedroom, Amara's breathing steadied. She knew what came next. She'd read it 100 times in case files. Unlawful entry, planted evidence, the easy lie of an anonymous tip. She'd spent years studying men like Carver, arrogant, sloppy, confident the world would never hold them accountable. Tonight, she would watch them prove her right. Mendoza reappeared, holding a small plastic bag. Found something, he said too quickly. Inside was white powder, barely half an ounce. Amara's eyes met Reed's. You didn't find it. He planted it. Reed froze. Ma'am, Carver snatched the bag, glaring. You think this is a game? You think wearing a fake badge gets you out of this? Amara didn't flinch. I don't wear fake badges. Carver grabbed her wrist and yanked her from the bed. Reed winced as her bare feet hit the cold floor. Get dressed, Carver ordered. You're coming with us. She nodded once, slow and deliberate. Do I get to see your warrant first? Carver didn't answer. He shoved her toward the doorway, past the broken frame of her own life. As she passed the lamp, its glow blinked twice, a quiet pulse of red hidden in the light. Reed followed last, glancing at the jacket still hanging there, gold letters glowing faintly under his flashlight. Something in his gut told him they had crossed a line they couldn't uncross. Outside, the street was empty except for the echo of boots and the rustle of plastic evidence bags. The woman didn't fight or shout. She simply walked between them, head high, eyes fixed on some point beyond the flashing red lights. When they reached the patrol car, Carver pushed her into the back seat. You have the right to remain silent, he said, more out of habit than duty. Amara smiled faintly. And you have the right to be very, very sorry. Reed closed the door softly, his reflection caught in the window beside her face. She sat motionless, but the look in her eyes chilled him more than the midnight air. It wasn't fear, it was certainty. Inside the apartment, the lamp's light changed from red to green, sending its signal into the dark. Somewhere across the city, a server came to life, recording every second of the raid. And while the men drove away believing they had won, Amara Lewis knew the truth. They had just stepped into her trap. The ride to the precinct was long enough for the city to forget it was asleep. Red and blue lights splashed across brick walls and wet pavement, cutting through the quiet like guilt. Amara sat in the back of the cruiser, wrists cuffed, her face half lit by the dashboard glow. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence did more damage than 1,000 protests could have. Reed drove. Carver sat in the passenger seat, chewing on his anger. The radio mumbled background static, dispatch voices flickering in and out. Unit 12, status check. Reed reached for the mic, but Carver slapped his hand away. Not a word. They pulled into the station garage, tires squealing slightly on the damp concrete. As Reed parked, Carver turned around to face her. You'll tell us where that dope came from, or I'll make sure you rot in holding till sunrise. Amara tilted her head. You mean the bag Mendoza dropped into my closet? Carver's jaw tightened. You got a mouth on you. She met his glare, calm and measured. And you've got cameras on you. For the first time, Carver hesitated. Reed looked down at the blinking red light on his chest cam. Steady, recording, loyal. He'd forgotten it was even there. Carver muttered a curse, yanking open his door. Get her inside. The station smelled of stale coffee and metal polish. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright for the hour. Mendoza waited near the booking desk, pretending confidence he didn't have. When Amara stepped out of the elevator, still barefoot, still unbroken, the few officers working the midnight shift turned to watch. Her composure unsettled them more than resistance ever could. Take her to interview 3, Carver ordered. I'll process the evidence. Reed hesitated. Sir, I said I'll handle it. Reed obeyed, guiding Amara down the hall. Her steps were soft but deliberate, as if she'd walked those halls before. When they reached the small gray room, she sat without being told. The chair creaked beneath her weight, the table cold steel under her palms. Reed closed the door. The sound clicked like a confession. Across the hall, Mendoza watched Carver empty the evidence bag onto the counter. You sure we're good, boss? Carver scowled. You asking me if I know how to cover my own ass? Mendoza shrugged. I'm just saying. She didn't look scared. Carver slammed the bag shut. Then she's either stupid or she knows something. Inside the interview room, Amara studied the reflection of the camera lens in the corner. A small red light blinked there, just like the one on the lamp back home. Everything was being recorded twice over. She leaned back, breathing slowly. They'll try to erase it, she thought, but it's already gone. Reed cleared his throat. Can I get you some water? I'm fine, she said. You look nervous. He didn't answer. You're new, she added quietly. Your hands give you away. They shake when you're not sure which side you're on. Reed's face reddened. I'm on the side of the law. Then I hope you remember which law that is, she said. Carver entered, file folder in hand, pretending to be in control. Let's make this simple. You tell me who your supplier is. Maybe I convince the DA to go light on you. Amara smiled faintly. That's cute. You rehearsed that? Carver slammed the folder onto the table. We found cocaine in your house. We can test it right now. Go ahead, she said. You might want to test your fingerprints on the bag while you're at it. Reed tried not to react, but the words landed like a brick. Carver leaned closer, voice low and venomous. Listen to me, sweetheart. I don't care who you think you are. You think that fake badge makes you untouchable? I'll make sure you disappear into the system before sunrise. Amara's expression didn't change. If I disappear, there will be people knocking on your door by noon. Who? He sneered. Your lawyer? She looked him straight in the eyes. No, my colleagues. Carver straightened. You're bluffing. She didn't respond. Outside the room, Mendoza muttered to another officer at the vending machine. You ever seen a perp like that? Quoting codes, laws. I swear, she knew exactly what to say. Maybe she's just smart, or maybe she's got something on us. Back inside, Amara finally broke the silence. I know your captain's on duty tonight, she said. Captain Wilson, ask him who authorized the raid. Carver froze. How do you know Wilson? I don't. But I know his name, his badge number, and that he was suspended 3 months ago for falsifying warrants. Reed's eyes widened. Carver recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. You've been doing your homework, huh? Amara shrugged. It's part of my job. Reed glanced at her again. What exactly is your job? She didn't answer, just looked toward the camera lens, voice steady as stone. To observe. Reed followed her gaze, and for the first time noticed the camera's light flicker. Steady, blinking, then steady again. He didn't know that somewhere, miles away, another camera in her apartment lamp was mirroring that same pulse, transmitting the raid footage to a secure server. Carver turned the folder toward her. Here's the deal. You signed this statement saying the drugs are yours, and maybe we let you walk out of here with a misdemeanor. You refuse. I push for felony distribution. You'll lose everything. Amara glanced down at the papers, then back up. You've already lost everything. You just don't know it yet. Carver's hand slammed the table hard enough to rattle the pen. Reed flinched. You think I'm scared of you? She smiled softly. No, you're scared of yourself. The words hit harder than any shout. Reed stepped back, staring at the woman who sat chained yet somehow in control. Carver grabbed the folder and stormed out. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving only the hum of the camera and the sound of Reed's uneven breathing. Amara spoke without looking up. He'll try to delete the footage. Reed swallowed. What footage? All of it. From tonight. From the time you kicked in my door to the moment you walked me in here. He hesitated, torn between fear and the quiet authority in her voice. And if he does? She looked at him then, eyes steady, calm as a tide. Then I hope you're man enough to tell the truth when they ask who did it. Down the hall, Carver was already in the tech room, barking orders. Wipe the body cams. Equipment malfunction. You hear me? Clean slate. The technician hesitated. Sir, that requires supervisor approval. Carver slammed a fist on the counter. You got it now. Back in interview 3, Amara closed her eyes for the first time since the raid began. Her wrists throbbed, but her breathing slowed. The hum of the lights above felt almost like the rhythm of a clock counting down. Reed stood in the corner, watching her, trying to reconcile everything he'd seen. The way she'd stayed calm, the way she'd spoken like she'd trained half of them. None of it fit. Finally, he asked, almost in a whisper, Who are you? Amara opened her eyes, and for a brief moment, something like sympathy flickered across her face. You'll find out soon enough, she said. In another part of the building, a technician's computer beeped. The deletion process froze at 2%. Error message. Access overridden. Federal server linked. Carver cursed, slamming his palm against the desk. Reed's radio crackled faintly. Somewhere in the static, a voice whispered through, Signal received. Amara smiled faintly. She didn't have to see it to know. The system was already awake. 48 hours earlier, the same lamp that would later blink red sat quietly in the corner of a small apartment overlooking the river. The city outside moved at a slower rhythm then, boats sliding through the dark water, the sound of sirens far away, harmless. Amara Lewis sat at her kitchen table, notebook open, coffee untouched. Her phone vibrated once, screen lighting up with a single message, secure line active. She tapped the earpiece in her right ear. A voice, calm and gravel low, filled the silence. "Walker here. You're still green on my board. You good?" "I'm good," she said. Her voice was steady, but fatigue crept around the edges. "Neighborhood's quiet, maybe too quiet." That's how it starts. They get sloppy when they think no one's watching. Carver's boys have been running the same play for months. Anonymous tips, no paperwork, fast arrests. We traced 7 of them to your district. "I've seen their names cross my desk," Amara said. "Same handwriting on every report." "Exactly. We need proof, not suspicions. You stay under until they take the bait. Once they move on you, it's over for them." She leaned back, rubbing her temple. "You're asking me to wait for them to kick my door in." "You volunteered," Walker reminded her gently. "I did," she said. "Still doesn't make it easier to sleep." Walker's silence stretched a moment. "You ever wonder why I picked you for this?" Amara glanced at the framed photo on the counter. Her father in uniform, his smile weary, his eyes proud. "Because I've seen what happens when no one fights back." "That's right," Walker said. "You fight smart, not loud. We already lost 2 agents in that department. We can't lose a third." "I'm not planning to be anyone's third," she said, and ended the call. She closed the notebook, the page filled with names, dates, and case numbers linked to a single pattern. Officers who reported discovery of narcotics after unlogged raids. Each name had a circle drawn beside it, and at the center of them all was one word: Carver. The next morning, she blended back into her cover life. Community therapist assigned to help families dealing with police trauma. Her office sat above a grocery store that smelled of old fruit and detergent. The people who came through her door were tired, cautious, carrying stories that never reached courtrooms. A man named Daryl, former truck driver, told her how they raided his home, found nothing, but destroyed his front door and his reputation. "They called me a dealer," he said, eyes red-rimmed. "My kid still asks why the cops hate us." Amara listened, every detail filing itself into memory. "Did they ever show you a warrant?" "No, ma'am, just guns and flashlights." "And the lead officer's name?" "Carver," he said, like the word itself left a bitter taste. She kept her face neutral, but her pulse quickened. "Thank you, Daryl. You've done more than you know." Later that afternoon, she met Walker in a cafe near the train station. He looked out of place there, tall, gray-haired, wearing the kind of suit that belonged in D.C., not by the river. They didn't greet each other like friends, just a nod, a shared history. He slid a small envelope across the table. Inside was a thin metal band, a watch that looked ordinary but wasn't. "It's live only when you press the dial twice. You get one signal before it burns itself out. After that, you're on your own until we arrive." Amara slipped it on, the weight familiar, grounding. "You sure they'll come for me?" Walker stirred his coffee. "You've been asking the right questions in the wrong neighborhood. It's only a matter of time." She studied him. "You ever get tired of sending people into fires you started?" His mouth twitched, something between guilt and understanding. "You ever get tired of walking into them?" They both knew the answer. That evening back home, Amara packed her living room like a stage. The lamp's camera synced to her encrypted phone. The phone synced to the federal server. She placed her badge, real, gleaming gold, in the pocket of her jacket and hung it near the front door. Deliberate, visible, a lure for anyone searching for validation of their paranoia. She walked to the window and looked down at the street. Children played basketball under a flickering light. Across the block, a patrol car idled longer than it should have. A shadow behind the wheel pretended to check a phone. She didn't need to see the face to know the posture of a cop watching his mark. When the clock hit midnight, she poured herself a glass of water, took one sip, and sat on the couch. Her notebook lay open again, pen resting between pages. She wrote a single sentence. "If they come tonight, it means the system still fears truth." Her phone vibrated once more, a text from an unknown number. You talk too much, counselor. She stared at the message, her reflection faint in the dark screen. Then she deleted it, powered the phone off, and whispered to the empty room, "Come then." The next day unfolded like a held breath. No knocks, no calls, no signs. She went about her cover, visited 2 clients, filed a report, smiled at neighbors. But by late afternoon, she noticed the small details. The same sedan parked outside again, the same man pretending to read a newspaper across from her office, the sudden quiet when she stepped out for lunch. They were circling, testing. That night, she phoned Walker once more. "They're close," she said. "Then you're close to done. Stay ready." "Define ready," she said. "Keep your camera live, keep your badge visible, and whatever happens, don't panic. People like Carver feed on fear. Deny him that." She exhaled softly. "I'll deny him everything." When the call ended, she sat alone for a long time, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the low murmur of the city. She felt the weight of the badge across the room, glinting under the lamp. She thought of her father again, how he used to say that justice wasn't a torch you carried high, it was a small flame you protected in the wind. She touched the watch on her wrist and thought, not of fear, but of inevitability. They would come. Maybe not tonight, maybe the next, but when they did, the world would finally see what she'd been seeing for years. Outside, a car door closed softly. Footsteps echoed up the stairwell. Amara didn't move. She reached for the lamp switch, turned it once, twice, and watched the faint red glow appear at its base. The camera was live. Then she stood, walked to the closet, and straightened the jacket with the FBI letters printed bold across its back. It hung there like a quiet truth waiting to be discovered. When she went to bed, she didn't pray for safety. She prayed for witnesses. And 2 nights later, at exactly 12:03 a.m., the door exploded inward, just as she had expected. The metal chair in the interrogation room groaned every time Amara shifted her weight, but she stayed still now, wrists cuffed to the table, breathing slow. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, steady and relentless. Her body ached from being thrown against the wall when they first dragged her in. But she let the pain sit quietly beside her like an old companion. Across the glass window, she could see Reed pacing, his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. Carver stood behind him, jaw tight, pretending to read paperwork he didn't understand. When the door opened, Carver came in first, the same swagger from the raid still clinging to him like smoke. Reed followed reluctantly, clipboard tucked under one arm. "You ready to talk?" Carver asked, dropping a thin folder on the table. "Or you still want to play lawyer?" Amara lifted her eyes, calm and unhurried. "I'd like to see your warrant first." Carver smirked. "Noise complaint. We don't need one." "You do for a search this extensive," she replied, her tone matter-of-fact, not defiant. "Title 18, Section 242 of the U.S. Code. You've exceeded your authority." Reed's pen froze over the form. Carver leaned forward, knuckles pressing into the metal. "You quoting law to me, sweetheart?" "Just reminding you of it," she said softly. "You seem to forget." He laughed, the sound short and bitter. "You think you're smart. I've seen your kind. Think you can twist the law to get out of trouble. But that badge on your wall doesn't make you one of us." Amara's gaze held his, steady as stone. "I never wanted to be one of you." The air in the room thickened. Reed shifted, uncomfortable, looking anywhere but at them. The tension between authority and truth, he thought, was a sound, something brittle and sharp that could snap at any second. Carver straightened. "We found drugs in your home. Bag of cocaine, closet drawer." "You want to explain that?" "Sure," Amara said. "It was planted there about 3 minutes before you found it." Reed swallowed hard. "Ma'am, check your body camera footage," she interrupted, eyes still on Carver. "You'll see who handled the bag before it ended up in that drawer." Carver's voice dropped low. "You accusing me of evidence tampering?" "I'm not accusing you of anything," she said. "I'm documenting." For the first time, Reed noticed the tiny microphone wire trailing from her shirt collar, half hidden beneath her hair. It looked ordinary, part of her tank top seam, but the detail clawed at his conscience. He couldn't look away. Carver caught the direction of his stare. "Eyes on me, Reed." "Yes, sir," Reed muttered. Carver turned back to her. "You think you're safe because you know a few legal terms? You're not. Once we're done here, you'll be booked, fingerprinted, processed, and forgotten." Amara leaned forward slightly. Forgotten by who? Carver didn't answer. He reached for the folder, flipping through papers he hadn't read. You got priors, Miss Lewis? She tilted her head. I'd think you'd know since you ran my file before you broke into my home. Carver stopped. The way she said it, calm, clinical, made him feel like the one on trial. He forced a grin. You think you're clever, don't you? I think I'm patient, she said. Patience is what gets people like me justice when men like you run out of lies. Reed looked up then, startled by her tone. It wasn't anger, it was certainty. Carver leaned closer, his breath heavy with coffee and frustration. You think anyone's going to believe your word over 3 officers? Amara smiled faintly. No, but they'll believe the footage. He froze for just a second, just long enough for her to see fear flicker behind his arrogance. Then he scoffed, stepping back. Body cams malfunction all the time. Not tonight, she said. Not yours. Reed turned to him. Sir, she's bluffing. Shut it, Carver barked. He grabbed the file and stormed toward the door, muttering curses under his breath. The slam echoed down the hall. When he was gone, Reed stood awkwardly by the wall, staring at the floor. You should stop antagonizing him, he said finally. He doesn't take well to being challenged. Amara looked up at him. And you, he frowned. What about me? You take well to it. He didn't answer. Your hands, she said quietly. They shake when he yells, not from fear of him, fear of what you might become standing next to him. Reed exhaled sharply, turning away. You don't know me. Not yet, she said, but I've known plenty like you. Good people who learn to look away at the wrong moment. It starts small, a lie on a report, a door kicked in without cause. Then one night you're planting evidence because your sergeant told you to, and you tell yourself it's fine because nobody got hurt, except somebody always does. Reed clenched his jaw. You should be careful what you say. Why? She asked. Truth's not illegal. Not yet. He left before she could say more. The door clicked shut, and Amara sat back, letting the quiet return. Somewhere in the ceiling, the faint hum of the recording system continued, steady, loyal, unblinking. Across the hall, Carver was in Captain Wilson's office, his voice low and tense. She's got some kind of setup going, knew the law like she wrote it, quoted case codes for God's sake. Wilson looked unimpressed. Then charge her. On what grounds? Carver asked. The same ones you always use, Wilson said flatly. Make it stick. Carver hesitated. She's not like the others. She had an FBI jacket in her house. Wilson's pen stopped mid-scratch. FBI? Probably fake, Carver said quickly. But still, Wilson leaned back. Keep her quiet. No leaks. I'll make some calls. Back in the interrogation room, Amara flexed her wrists against the cuffs. They bit into her skin, small circles of pain she used to stay awake. She studied the mirror in front of her, knowing full well someone stood on the other side. She spoke to the glass, her voice barely above a whisper. You're watching, right? You always are. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, faintly, through the radio static on Reed's shoulder mic, a voice she recognized cut through. Walker's, low and calm. Signal confirmed. She smiled to herself. They had no idea that the raid, the arrest, every word spoken in this room was being mirrored onto a federal server miles away. Every lie, every threat, every abuse of power now belonged to her case file. The door opened again. Carver returned, red-faced, a new edge to his anger. We're done talking, he said. You're being charged with possession. Amara rose slowly, meeting his eyes. Make sure you spell my name right. Wouldn't want any mistakes on a federal record. He laughed bitterly. You're not federal. She smiled. Keep telling yourself that. He motioned for Reed to cuff her tighter and lead her out. As she walked past the mirror, her reflection looked back, composed, deliberate, unbroken. She counted every step, memorizing every turn of the hallway. This wasn't defeat. It was documentation. By the time they reached the holding cells, she could already hear Wilson's voice on the phone down the hall, hushed but anxious. She caught just one word, FBI, before the door closed behind her. She sat on the narrow cot, the air cold against her skin, the steel bars humming faintly as a train passed somewhere far away. Her mind replayed Carver's face when she mentioned the footage. The brief flash of doubt, the start of fear. That was the crack she needed. She lay back, staring at the ceiling, whispering to the empty cell, "You're running out of time, Lieutenant." And for the first time that night, Carver did something he hadn't done in years. He double-checked that his body camera was still on. The hum of computers filled the equipment room like a quiet confession. Officer Lila Monroe sat hunched over the terminal, her badge still new enough to shine under the fluorescent light. The midnight shift was supposed to be dull. Paperwork, noise complaints, the occasional drunk sobbing in the cell block. But tonight, the screens in front of her showed something else entirely. Row after row of files labeled Bodycam 12 and Evidence 2A flickered across the monitor. One of them was still uploading from a squad car. She clicked it open. Static filled the speakers for a second before the video stabilized. The feed came from Reed's camera, timestamp 12:04 a.m. The first thing she saw was the door bursting inward, splinters flying, voices yelling, a woman's startled gasp. Lila's hand hovered over the mouse. She fast-forwarded and froze on a frame. Mendoza leaning into a closet, his hand dipping into his own jacket pocket. A flash of plastic. Then, almost casually, he placed a small bag behind a stack of folded clothes before turning and shouting, "Found it!" Lila sat back, heart thudding. She replayed it twice, 3 times, hoping she'd imagined it. But it was clear as daylight. She could see his badge number, the angle of the flashlight, even the way Carver nodded when Mendoza held the evidence up for the camera. She whispered to herself, "No, this can't be real." From the hallway came the echo of footsteps and the low rumble of men's voices. She minimized the window, fingers trembling. Carver's voice carried through the door, sharp, irritated. "Get those files wiped. All of them. Tech says we had a malfunction." Lila turned back to the screen. The progress bar on the upload crawled from 42% to 43%. She had seconds to decide. Her stomach twisted. New on the job, 3rd month in the department, she'd worked too hard to lose it all. But the woman in that video hadn't screamed, hadn't begged. She'd spoken calmly, quoting laws Lila had only skimmed during training. "You're violating Title 18, Section 242. She whispered the words under her breath, trying to remember what they meant. Something about deprivation of rights under color of law. She clicked copy and inserted her thumb drive. The system hesitated, then transferred the file with a quiet chime. The door opened. Reed stepped inside, glancing around. "Monroe, you still here?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, finishing the uploads." He rubbed his neck, eyes tired. "Carver's in a mood. Probably best if you shut everything down for the night." "I will." Reed lingered, his gaze flicking to her monitor. "You see anything unusual?" Lila hesitated. "Define unusual," he sighed. "You know what I mean." She studied him for a moment, then asked softly, "Did you see it too?" He didn't answer. The silence was enough. She handed him a printout she'd made minutes earlier. Timestamp, GPS, file path. "If they try to delete it, this is proof it existed." He stared at the paper like it was a live grenade. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because you still look like someone who cares what's right." He folded the paper carefully, slipped it into his pocket. "You don't know me that well." "Maybe not," she said, "but I know the look of someone trying not to drown." Carver's voice shouted from down the hall, "Reed, get over here!" Reed muttered a curse and left. The door shut behind him with a heavy thud. Lila turned back to the monitor, pulse racing. The upload hit 100%. Transfer complete. She deleted her local copy and ejected the drive, tucking it into the lining of her boot. Outside the tech room, the station buzzed with restless energy. Officers moved quickly, avoiding eye contact. Everyone knew something was off, but no one said it aloud. The smell of burnt coffee and stale adrenaline filled the air. Lila walked to the small break room, pretending calm. Through the window, she could see the holding cells below, rows of gray bars and tired faces. At the far end sat Amara Lewis. Even from this distance, Lila could tell she wasn't broken. She sat upright, head slightly tilted, as if listening for something only she could hear. Carver and Captain Wilson were talking near the office doors. Wilson's tone was low, but urgent. "If she's who you say she is, we need to control this fast. Chain of command can't know until we've cleaned it up." Carver nodded. "Already told Tech to wipe the cams." Wilson frowned. "And?" Carver lowered his voice. "One of them's locked. Says federal encryption. I'll get around it." Lila turned away before they saw her watching. She slipped into the stairwell, breathing hard. Her mind raced. Federal encryption. That meant someone outside their system was already pulling the footage. She thought of the blinking red light on the body cam, how it mirrored the one on the lamp in Amara's apartment. Whoever that woman was, she hadn't been caught off guard. She'd been waiting. She climbed down to the first floor, heading toward the evidence room. Reed was there, standing beside the lockers, looking pale. He held the evidence bag with the cocaine inside. "They told me to re-tag it," he said when he saw her. "Are you going to?" He looked down at the bag, the white powder swirling faintly inside. "If I don't, I lose my badge. If I do, I lose whatever's left of my soul." Lila stepped closer. "You ever think maybe the badge isn't worth keeping?" He gave a short laugh. "That's easy for you to say. You just got here. You still think the system works." She met his eyes. "I think people work, if they choose to." Reed looked at her for a long time, then whispered, "Keep your head down, Monroe. This isn't your fight." "Maybe it is," she said. Before he could reply, Carver strode in. "What the hell's taking so long?" Reed stiffened. "Just checking the tag number." Carver snatched the bag from his hands. "Don't check. Do. We've got a DA to convince." He stormed out, barking orders at Mendoza in the hall. Reed exhaled shakily. "You better go home," he told Lila. "Forget what you saw." But she couldn't. The images from the video replayed behind her eyes. The planted evidence, the calm woman quoting law, the smug certainty on Carver's face. The kind of certainty that only exists when a man thinks the world will always protect him. Back in the equipment room, she slid the thumb drive into her pocket and opened a private email window on the secure network. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She didn't type names or details, just a subject line, possible civil rights violation, urgent. She attached the footage and clicked send to Federal Oversight Server. The confirmation message blinked once, then disappeared. A shiver ran through her. She knew she'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Somewhere above her, thunder rolled faintly over the city. Rain began tapping against the windows, soft at first, then harder. Downstairs, Amara looked up from her cot, hearing the storm build. She smiled faintly, knowing someone, somewhere, had just made the first move. Lila shut down the computer, locked the door behind her, and walked out into the corridor. The overhead lights flickered once as the rain hit the roof. She could feel the weight of what she'd done pressing against her chest. Heavy but right. In the captain's office, Wilson's phone rang. He listened for a moment, then cursed under his breath. "They know," he said to Carver. "Someone's seen the footage." Carver's face went pale. "Who?" Wilson didn't answer. Outside, lightning flashed through the windows, bleaching the room white for a second. The storm had arrived, and in the shadows of the hallway, Lila Monroe kept walking, clutching the tiny drive in her boot like a secret too dangerous to drop. Thunder rolled across the city, stretching the night thin and uneasy. At the federal building downtown, Assistant Director Walker sat at his desk. The lights dimmed, the windows streaked with rain. He'd been reviewing case files when a small red light on his encrypted monitor began to blink. The signal was faint, but unmistakable, an emergency code reserved for agents working undercover. He froze, coffee halfway to his lips, then set the cup down slowly. The name flashing on the screen made his stomach tighten. Agent A. Lewis, distress beacon active. He tapped a secure line open. "This is Walker." A technician's voice came through the headset. "Sir, we're picking up an encrypted signal from a local precinct, Metro West. It's tied to Lewis's watch." Walker stood. "Confirm it. Trace every feed connected to that station. I want live access within 5 minutes." "Yes, sir." He moved to the operations room, boots echoing on the tile. The small overnight team scrambled awake at the tone in his voice. Screens lit up, maps loading, satellite feeds adjusting. Within moments, an image of the precinct appeared, static dancing across the frame. "She's inside," the tech said. "Holding area, basement level." Walker's face hardened. "Get me protocol echo." Across the city, the rain fell harder, beating against the roof of Metro West like a warning. Inside, Captain Wilson stood with Carver outside his office door, arguing in low, tense voices. "You said this woman was just some counselor," Wilson hissed. "Now I've got people from downtown asking questions about missing case files." Carver's jaw flexed. "We're handling it." "Are you?" Wilson shot back. "Because right now it looks like someone inside our own department leaked footage to the feds." Carver's eyes flicked toward the hallway where Lila Monroe had just passed, carrying a stack of reports. "Maybe you should start by checking your rookies." "Don't deflect," Wilson snapped. You find out who she is and how much she knows. If this goes federal, it's not just your badge, it's mine." Carver didn't answer. He was already thinking about the woman sitting in the cell, how she looked at him like she was reading him line by line. Something about her calm had crawled under his skin and stayed there. Downstairs, Amara sat on her cot, her wrists now free but red from the cuffs. The cell door was still locked, but she'd been here long enough to notice the small camera in the corner blinking irregularly. Every time it flashed, she imagined Walker's team watching through the feed. She closed her eyes, steadying her breathing. The night pressed close around the building. Lila sat alone in her patrol car, parked 2 blocks away, pretending to write a report. In her boot, the drive she'd hidden earlier felt like a heartbeat pulsing against her skin. She glanced at her phone. No service. The rain made everything muffled, ghostly. She took a breath, then pulled out the small radio clipped to her belt. "Dispatch, this is Unit 9, requesting line check." "Static," answered her. Then faintly, "Unit 9, go ahead." "Signal's weak," she said, keeping her voice even. "Confirm that federal oversight is active on tonight's operations?" There was a pause too long to be normal. Then the voice came back, softer. "Who's asking?" Lila hesitated. "Officer Monroe." Silence again, and then, "Stay in position. Don't go back inside." She frowned. "Who is this? Just don't go back inside." The line went dead. She stared at the radio for a moment, pulse climbing. In the distance, lightning flashed, illuminating the black SUVs already turning off the main road. She counted 3, maybe 4, moving with purpose. No sirens, no headlights. Federal plates. Her breath caught. They were coming. At the precinct, Carver stormed back into the evidence room. "Mendoza, wipe everything, body cams, booking files, logs, now." Mendoza hesitated. "That's tampering. Do it." The younger officer swallowed hard and began typing, sweat beading on his forehead, but the files wouldn't delete. A small box popped up on the screen. "Access denied. Remote lock engaged." "What the hell is this?" Mendoza stammered. Carver grabbed the mouse, trying again. The same message blinked. "Someone's inside our system." Wilson burst through the doorway. "Federal networks pinging our servers. What did you idiots do?" Before anyone could answer, the hallway lights flickered once, twice, then went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in, washing everything in red. From the holding cells below came the faint echo of footsteps, measured, unhurried. Reed, standing at the end of the corridor, looked up sharply. "Captain?" His radio crackled. "All units, this is dispatch. We have a—" The transmission cut off in a burst of static. In her cell, Amara stood, her silhouette outlined by the dim light spilling from the hall. She could hear the commotion upstairs, the frantic footsteps, the barked orders, and beneath it all, the quiet hum of her watch vibrating against her wrist. "Right on time," she whispered. Walker's command vehicle pulled up outside, tires slicing through puddles. Agents in dark windbreakers poured out, taking positions around the entrances. Walker stepped into the rain, coat already soaked, his voice calm through the earpiece. "Team Alpha, east entrance. Team Bravo, garage access. No gunfire unless fired upon." He glanced at the map on his tablet. "Agent Lewis is still transmitting from basement level. Get her out." Inside, chaos had replaced control. Wilson shouted orders that no one followed. Reed, torn between instinct and confusion, ran toward the basement. He found Amara standing by the bars, eyes sharp but composed. "What's happening?" he asked. She stepped closer to the bars. "Justice catching up." "I don't understand," he said. "You don't have to. Just decide which side you want to stand on when this is over." Before he could reply, the basement door burst open. Agents in tactical gear swept in, rifles lowered but ready. "Federal Bureau of Investigation. Step back!" Reed raised his hands automatically. Amara exhaled in relief. One of the agents keyed the lock and swung the cell door open. "Agent Lewis?" She nodded once. "Status?" Protocol Echo confirmed. "Data transfer complete. They've been trying to wipe it, but the system's sealed." "Good." She stepped out, straightening her posture. "Let's finish it." Upstairs, Carver's radio exploded with noise. "This is a federal operation. All officers stand down." He spun toward the sound of boots pounding up the stairwell. "Wilson!" he shouted. "They can't just walk in here." But Wilson was already backing away, face pale. "They can if she's who I think she is." "What do you mean?" Carver demanded. Wilson's eyes darted toward the stairs, where 2 federal agents now stood framed in the doorway. "I mean, You kicked in the wrong door. Outside, Lila stepped out of her car, rain plastering her hair to her forehead. From her position, she could see the agents swarming the building, the flashes of light, the sense that something irreversible was unfolding. She touched her boot where the thumb drive rested. Inside, Walker's voice echoed through the corridors as he entered. This building is under federal jurisdiction. All unauthorized personnel will clear the premises immediately. Reed stood frozen as Amara walked beside the federal team, calm and certain, the same way she'd looked that first night when they burst into her home. Carver stared, disbelief etched across his face. "You set us up," he said hoarsely. Amara stopped. "No," she said. "You set yourselves up. I just made sure the world would see it." Rain hammered the windows, thunder rolling again overhead. For the first time in his career, Carver had no words. Walker met his gaze briefly, then looked past him to Amara. "You ready to go home?" She nodded. "Not yet. There's still work to do." As they let her out, the corridor filled with the sound of radios crackling, files being seized, and the distant wail of approaching sirens. The city outside was waking up, unaware that inside one precinct, years of buried crimes were unraveling. And in the parking lot, as the federal vehicles began to pull away, Officer Lila Monroe stood in the rain, watching the lights fade into the distance, realizing that sometimes justice didn't roar. It arrived quietly, on the back of a signal no one thought would ever be answered. The interrogation room had always been Carver's stage. He knew its rhythm. The hum of the fluorescent light, the metallic scrape of a chair, the slow collapse of a suspect's voice under the weight of his questions. But tonight, something in that room felt off. It was too quiet, too clean. And the woman sitting across from him wasn't breaking. She was waiting. Amara sat with her hands folded, no cuffs this time, her posture straight as a line. There was no trace of fear in her eyes, just focus, the kind that makes a man feel seen all the way through. Carver tossed a folder onto the table. It landed with a flat smack. "You've had plenty of time to think," he said. "Now's your chance to stop pretending." She didn't look down at the file. "Pretending about what?" He flipped it open, jabbing a finger at the top page. "The drugs, the anonymous tip, the people you deal with. You mean the ones you and your team invented?" He smirked. "You're funny. I'll give you that." "I'm not joking." The silence stretched. Reed stood by the door, hands clasped behind him. He was trying to disappear, but his eyes kept flicking toward the camera in the corner. It blinked steadily, recording everything. Carver leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Let's cut through it. We both know you're not just some counselor. You've been sniffing around cops, asking questions, digging where you don't belong. Maybe you thought no one would notice." Amara's gaze never left him. People always notice when you shine a light in dark places. The question is, what do they do when it's pointed at them? Carver's smirk faltered. "You think you're clever?" "I think I'm done playing dumb." Her tone shifted, low, deliberate, controlled. "You want to know what I do for a living, Lieutenant? I investigate corruption, not the kind in city contracts or elections, the kind that wears a badge, the kind that plants evidence and calls it justice." Carver froze, a muscle in his jaw twitching. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" she said softly. "You're being recorded, Carver, not just by that camera. Everything you've done tonight has already been mirrored to a federal server. Try deleting it. It's already safe." Reed's breath caught. He hadn't known that part. He stepped forward. "Sir, maybe we should." "Quiet," Carver snapped, but his voice cracked on the word. He turned back to her, eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" "Special Agent Amara Lewis, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Internal Affairs Division, Public Integrity Task Force. Been investigating your unit for the last 18 months. Reed's face drained of color. 18 months? She nodded. "Since the first anonymous tip that didn't exist." Carver laughed once, sharp and hollow. "That's a nice story. Problem is I don't see any badge." Amara's expression didn't change. "It's hanging in your evidence locker, then up bagged with my wallet. Ask your booking sergeant." He saw it. He just didn't realize what it meant. Carver slammed his hand down. "Enough. You think you can walk in here, flash a badge, and make us roll over?" "You already did that when you kicked in my door," she said calmly. He stood there, chest heaving, but the fury on his face was starting to curdle into fear. He looked toward the mirror. "Wilson!" he barked. "Get in here!" No one came. The door stayed closed. "Captain!" He shouted again. Still nothing. Amara tilted her head. He's busy, she said, probably on the phone with your chief, trying to figure out how to explain a federal arrest inside his own station. Carver turned on Reed. What's going on? Reed hesitated. Sir, the radios are down. I can't reach dispatch either. Carver's mind spun, panic crawling up his spine. He looked back at Amara. You set us up. She leaned forward just enough to make her voice a whisper. No, I let you show who you really are. The sound of rain hammered against the windows. Somewhere in the distance, a door slammed, then another. Carver could feel the building shifting, the energy changing, officers moving faster, whispers spreading. Something was happening outside this room. Reed's radio crackled faintly, then a voice came through. All units stand by for federal contact. Repeat, stand by. Carver ripped the radio off his vest, staring at it like it had betrayed him. What did you do? Amara's eyes met his. I told the truth. He paced, running a hand through his hair. You don't know what you've started. Oh, I know exactly what I've started, she said. It's called accountability. Reed swallowed hard. Sir, maybe we should let her go. Carver spun on him. You out of your mind? We're in too deep to back out now. Reed took a step closer to Amara. If she's FBI, we're in a lot deeper than you think. The overhead light flickered once. The hum of the air conditioner stopped. Power cut for just a second, enough to make Carver glance nervously toward the ceiling. When the lights came back, Amara was still sitting there, unshaken. From the hallway came the sound of boots, heavy, synchronized, not local. Federal. Carver's pulse hammered. This is insane, he muttered. Amara leaned back in her chair, watching him unravel. What's insane is thinking you could hide this forever. Reed turned to her, voice quiet, almost pleading. Why didn't you stop it sooner? Why let it go this far? She looked at him with something close to sympathy. Because people don't believe corruption until they see it happen in real time. You just gave them the proof. The door opened without warning. Captain Wilson stood there, face pale, sweat at his temple. Carver, he said, his voice barely steady. You need to let her go. What? Now. Wilson's eyes darted toward the hallway. Feds are here. They've got warrants. They know everything. Carver's mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked back at Amara, and for the first time saw her not as a suspect, but as a storm that had already arrived. She rose slowly, her chair scraping the floor. Told you, she said. Wilson backed away from the doorway, voice trembling. They want to talk to you first, Lieutenant, about evidence tampering, civil rights violations. You're on the list. Carver looked between them, disbelief written across his face. You can't do this. Amara stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. You did it to yourself. Reed moved aside as she walked past, her steps quiet, deliberate. He caught her sleeve for half a second. Agent Lewis, he whispered, the title feeling strange on his tongue. What happens to us now? She paused. That depends on what you do next. When she left the room, Carver sank into the chair she'd been sitting in, staring at the folder still lying on the table. His reflection in the metal surface looked older, smaller. Outside, the murmur of federal voices filled the station. Orders being given, doors opening, the sound of something much larger than him closing in. Through the one-way glass, Reed could see Amara walking down the corridor flanked by agents. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. For the first time since the night began, the power in the building had shifted completely. Carver lowered his head into his hands, the weight of his own choices pressing down. And in the camera's red glow, still recording, Amara's last words hung in the air like a verdict, soft, inevitable, and true. Rain slicked the streets outside Metro West as the first rays of dawn blurred against the storm clouds. The city still slept, unaware that justice had come calling. Inside the precinct, chaos reigned. Voices shouting orders, the metallic click of weapons being lowered, the hum of radios choked with interference. Federal agents in dark windbreakers filled the hallways like a silent tide. The emblem on their shoulders, FBI, glimmered under the emergency lights, reflecting off puddles that had formed from wet boots tracking in the rain. Amara Lewis walked through the front doors as if she'd been expected. She wore her black field jacket again, her badge gleaming at her chest, the weight of her authority undeniable now. The air shifted the moment she stepped in. Officers stopped mid-motion, words dying in their throats. The woman they dragged out of bed hours ago in handcuffs was back, and this time she wasn't the one under arrest. Assistant Director Walker followed close behind her, his voice steady but sharp. Secure all entrances. No one leaves this building without clearance. Carver stood frozen near the reception desk, drenched in sweat, still wearing his bulletproof vest. His hand twitched toward his belt, not for his weapon. He wasn't that reckless, but for the radio clipped beside it, as if one more call might save him. He watched as agents moved past him, collecting evidence bags, tagging computers, seizing body cameras from lockers. His voice came out hoarse. "You can't just walk in here." Walker turned toward him, eyes cold. "We didn't walk in. We were invited by your crimes." Carver swallowed, but his throat was dry. "You don't know what you're talking about." Amara stepped closer, and for the first time he noticed how tall she stood, how calm. "You planted drugs in my home, Lieutenant. You broke into a federal agent's residence without a warrant. You destroyed property, falsified reports, and violated civil rights under color of law. Trust me, I know exactly what I'm talking about." Her voice didn't rise, but it carried through the entire lobby. Heads turned. A young officer near the records desk lowered his eyes, guilt coloring his face. Wilson appeared at the end of the hallway, his composure cracking under the pressure. "Agent Lewis," he began, forcing a smile. "There's clearly been a misunderstanding. I can." Walker cut him off. "The only misunderstanding, Captain, is how you thought you'd get away with this." He gestured toward two agents. "Place Captain Wilson under arrest." The room erupted in a flurry of movement. Wilson tried to protest, but the sound of handcuffs snapping around his wrists drowned him out. Carver took a step back, disbelief etched deep in his features. Mendoza muttered something under his breath, half prayer, half curse. Amara walked past them, heading for the evidence room. Reed stood nearby, unsure whether to salute her or apologize. Their eyes met for a brief moment, hers calm, his clouded with shame. She stopped just long enough to say quietly, "You still have a choice, officer." He blinked. Choice? To tell the truth. She didn't wait for his answer. Inside the evidence room, a team of agents worked quickly, cataloging items, sealing drives, removing hard disks from computers. Lila Monroe stood among them, drenched from the rain but defiant, clutching a clipboard. She looked up as Amara entered. For a second, the two women just stared at each other, the unspoken recognition between a witness and a believer. "You're the one who sent the footage," Amara said softly. Lila nodded. "Someone had to." A faint smile crossed Amara's face. "You did the right thing?" "I didn't do it for you," Leela said. "I did it for me. I joined the force to help people, not to bury evidence." Amara's voice softened. "Then don't stop now." Outside, thunder rolled again. Agents began escorting Wilson and Mendoza toward the waiting SUVs. Carver stood rooted in place, watching everything fall apart around him. His radio crackled faintly, dispatch trying to reach him, but he didn't move to answer. The walls that had protected him for years were collapsing, brick by brick, under the weight of truth. Walker approached him, holding a manila envelope. "Lieutenant Carver, under federal law, you're being charged with evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to violate civil rights." Carver laughed once, a brittle, desperate sound. "You think anyone will believe her? She's setting us up." Amara stepped forward, holding up a small device. "This is your body camera from tonight. Unedited. You planted the evidence yourself." She pressed a button, and the audio filled the room. Carver's voice crackled through the speaker. "Found it. Look what we have here." A beat later, Amara's voice replied from the recording, calm and clear. "You just planted that." The sound echoed off the walls. No one spoke. Reed looked down at his boots. Lila crossed her arms, her face pale. Walker said quietly, "You can fight the evidence in court, but I wouldn't recommend it." Carver's hands shook. "You don't understand. Wilson ordered it. I was following protocol." Wilson, already being led out, turned back, eyes blazing. "Don't drag me into your mess." Amara's expression didn't change. "You dragged yourselves." Walker gave the signal. Two agents stepped forward, cuffing Carver's wrists. The metal clicked shut, sharp and final. For a moment, he stood there, breathing heavily, as if the air itself had betrayed him. Amara watched him, not with vengeance, but with something closer to sorrow. "Do you know what the worst part is?" she asked quietly. "You believed you were the law, but the law isn't you, it's the people you swore to protect." He didn't answer. His eyes followed her as they led him away, the sound of the storm outside swallowing everything else. Walker turned to Amara. We've secured the footage and the evidence logs. The servers are under federal control. We'll start the formal investigation at headquarters. Good, she said. Make sure every name gets written down. Every report, every false charge. He nodded, then hesitated. You should take a break, Amara. You've been running this operation too long. She looked out the rain-streaked window, where dawn was just beginning to break, a thin line of light cutting through the darkness. No, she said softly. This is the part I've been waiting for. As the agents moved through the precinct, collecting what remained of the night's deceit, Amara walked toward the exit. Reed stood near the doorway, watching her. Agent Lewis, he said, voice low. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. She stopped. Then prove it. Testify. Tell the truth. That's how you start making it right. He nodded, but the guilt in his eyes lingered. She stepped past him into the rain. The air outside was cold and alive, carrying the faint smell of ozone and wet concrete. Black SUVs lined the curb, engines humming. Wilson and Carver sat inside separate vehicles, heads bowed, hands cuffed. Cameras would follow later. Reporters would swarm, stories would be told, but for now, there was only silence. Walker joined her under the overhang. You ready to head back? He asked. Amara looked at the station one last time, the place that had tried to bury her truth and instead became her proof. Yeah, she said finally. Let's go home. As they pulled away, the precinct lights flickered behind them, fading into the storm. Inside one of the SUVs, Carver pressed his forehead against the glass, watching Amara's reflection in the window. For the first time, he understood what it meant to lose everything without ever realizing it was already gone. And in the distance, as thunder rolled one final time, the city began to wake to the news that the law had finally turned its gaze inward. The courthouse smelled faintly of rain and paper, that strange blend of old stone and bureaucracy that seemed to hold every secret the city ever tried to bury. A month had passed since the night of the raid, but for Amara, time hadn't softened the edges. Every morning she woke to the same silence, the kind that only comes after noise too loud to forget. She'd spent 15 years chasing cases like this one, but it never felt like victory when the arrests were done. Justice, she'd learned, was quieter than vengeance. It didn't cheer. It just waited. Reporters filled the front steps of the federal courthouse, their umbrellas blooming like black flowers under the drizzle. Headlines already called it the Metro West scandal, though to Amara, it was simply the truth, finally catching up. Inside, the marble floors echoed with the footsteps of lawyers, agents, and witnesses. She moved through the halls in her black suit, her badge clipped at her belt, her file heavy in her hand. She could feel eyes on her as she passed, some curious, some grateful, a few resentful. Walker met her outside courtroom 6. He looked tired but steady, his gray hair damp from the weather. They'll enter their pleas today, he said. Carver, Wilson, Mendoza, all of them. And Reed? He's cooperating, Walker said. Full statement, consistent with the body cam evidence. He's naming names. Amara nodded. Good. Maybe he'll sleep again someday. Walker studied her face. And you? I don't sleep, she said. They stepped inside the courtroom together. It was crowded. Rows of agents, journalists, and citizens who'd come to see the men who'd worn their fears as armor. At the defense table, Carver sat stiff, his orange jumpsuit too bright under the fluorescent lights. He looked smaller without his vest and weapon, just another man who'd mistaken authority for power. Wilson sat beside him, face drawn, whispering to his attorney. Mendoza stared at the floor, jaw tight, pretending he didn't care. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The sound of the gavel brought the room to order. This court is now in session, the clerk announced. Amara took her seat at the prosecution table. The air felt heavier here, like the truth itself was leaning on everyone present. As the charges were read, civil rights violations, evidence tampering, false imprisonment, she didn't look at the defendants. She'd already seen what she needed to see in their eyes that night when the handcuffs closed. Regret, fear, confusion, never remorse. Reed was called first. He walked to the stand in his pressed uniform, though his badge had been surrendered weeks ago. He took the oath with a trembling hand. When the prosecutor asked him to describe the events of that night, he hesitated for a long moment. Then he spoke. They told me it was a drug bust, he began, his voice low. Said we had an anonymous tip, a probable cause. I didn't question it. I just followed orders. We broke down the door around midnight. She, Agent Lewis, wasn't resisting. She asked for a warrant. I didn't know then who she was. He paused, swallowing hard. But I knew we were wrong. You can feel it when something's wrong. It's heavy. It sits on your skin. Carver glared at him, but Reed didn't look away. I saw Sergeant Mendoza place the evidence. I didn't stop him. I wish I had. The prosecutor nodded. And you later learned the identity of the woman you arrested? Yes, Reed said. Federal agent, internal affairs. She'd been investigating us for over a year. A murmur swept through the room. Walker glanced at Amara, but she stayed still. She wasn't here for the spectacle. She was here for the record. When Reed stepped down, the prosecutor called her name. The courtroom quieted as she walked to the stand. She took the oath, her hands steady. The judge's gaze was kind but probing. Agent Lewis, he said, you've been at the center of this investigation from the beginning. Please tell the court in your own words what happened that night. Amara met his eyes. It wasn't about one night, she said. It was about years. Years of people too afraid to speak, too poor to fight back, too tired to hope that anyone would listen. I'd been tracking their unit for 18 months. Patterns of illegal searches, fabricated reports, planted evidence. It wasn't chaos. It was method. It was a system built to protect itself. Her voice didn't shake. When they came to my home, I wasn't surprised. I knew it would happen eventually. The raid was the last piece of evidence I needed. Everything they did was recorded. The planting, the threats, the false arrest. They thought they were silencing me, but they were building my case for me. She paused, letting the weight of the words settle. Justice isn't a feeling, she said quietly. It's proof. The judge nodded. Thank you, Agent Lewis. When she stepped down, she passed within feet of Carver. He didn't lift his head, but she heard him whisper, You ruined my life. She stopped just long enough to answer, No, Lieutenant. You did that yourself. By afternoon, the pleas were entered. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Each word landed like a nail being driven into a long-forgotten coffin. Wilson's attorney tried for leniency, citing decades of service, but the judge cut him off. Service without integrity is not service, he said. It's betrayal. Outside, the storm had cleared. Sunlight broke through the clouds for the first time in days, streaming through the tall courthouse windows and washing the marble floor in gold. Reporters crowded around when the session ended, microphones outstretched, questions flying. Agent Lewis, what message does this verdict send? She paused at the top of the courthouse steps, her face calm beneath the swarm of cameras. It says justice isn't perfect, she said, but it's persistent. It doesn't give up, even when people do. The reporters scribbled furiously. Some would quote her words out of context, twist them into headlines meant to sell outrage, but she didn't care. The ones who needed to understand would. Walker joined her outside. It's done, he said. Not yet, she replied. It's never done. They walked together down the courthouse steps. Across the street, a small group of citizens held signs, families of those wrongfully arrested, people who had once been voices in the dark. When they saw her, they started to applaud. Not loud, not chanting, just steady, quiet claps that carried something deeper than noise. Lila Monroe was among them. She'd left the force 2 weeks ago and joined the federal task force as a liaison. She stepped forward, shaking Amara's hand. Told you I wasn't done. Amara smiled faintly. Neither am I. The sun climbed higher, the air warm now against the courthouse steps. For the first time in months, Amara let herself breathe. The sound of the city returning to life filled the spaces between her thoughts. She looked up, eyes tracing the light bouncing off the courthouse columns. You know, she said to Walker, my father used to say truth doesn't shout, it waits. I think he was right. Walker smiled. He raised a good agent. He raised someone who doesn't quit, she said. They stood there for a long moment, watching the reporters disperse, the crowd thin, the city move on. Justice wasn't glamorous. It was slow, grinding, sometimes thankless, but it was real, and for now that was enough. 6 months later, spring returned to the city as if nothing had ever gone wrong. The rain still came in short bursts, washing the same cracked sidewalks and leaning lampposts, but the air felt lighter somehow, as if the weight of what had been exposed had finally lifted. The Metro West precinct had new leadership, new training programs, and, if the news reports were to be believed, a new conscience. But Amara knew change never moved that fast. The system didn't heal in months. It just learned to limp differently. She stood at her apartment window, coffee cooling in her hands, watching sunlight scatter across the river. The city always looked peaceful from up here. Too peaceful for what it hid. Her desk behind her was covered with case files, manila folders stacked like tombstones, each one carrying someone's story of abuse, neglect, or power gone unchecked. She'd promised herself she would take time off after the trial, but rest had never been her talent. Her phone buzzed on the table. Walker's name flashed on the screen. She answered on the second ring. "Morning, Agent Lewis," he said. His voice carried the same rough calm it always did, but there was something new under it. Hesitation. "Morning, Director," she replied. "You sound like a man about to ruin my day." He chuckled softly. "Wouldn't dream of it. I just thought you'd want to know. The sentencing came down an hour ago." Amara turned from the window. All of them. All of Wilson, 15 years. Carver, 20. Mendoza, 12. No parole for the first half. Reed testified again, helped seal the case. The judge called it systemic betrayal. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the words settle. And the victims? They'll receive compensation from the department's liability fund. Not enough, but it's something. Lila's been helping them navigate the paperwork. She's good at it. Amara smiled faintly. She always was. Walker paused. "You did good work, Amara. The Bureau's proud. Hell, the whole Justice Department's using your case for training now." She laughed quietly. "That's one way to make sure they remember it." "I've got something else for you," he said, his tone shifting. "Something long-term, sensitive." "I figured." "Operation Havenline," he said. "Federal detention centers on the southern border. Reports of abuse, falsified transfers, missing detainees. It's big, Amara. It'll take years." She leaned against the desk, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "How many years?" "As many as it takes," he said. The line went silent for a beat, filled only by the hum of distance. She could almost see him at his office window in D.C., looking out over a skyline she no longer trusted. "When do I start?" she asked. "You already have," he said. "Files in your inbox. And Amara, be careful. You know how deep this goes." "I always am," she said, though they both knew it wasn't true. When the call ended, she stood there for a long time, staring at the stack of folders waiting for her. The clock on the wall ticked quietly. On the far side of the room, the lamp that had once hidden a camera still stood, silent witness to everything that had happened. She never turned it on anymore, but she couldn't bring herself to throw it away. Some things weren't reminders, they were anchors. She picked up her jacket, slipped her badge into the inside pocket, and walked out. The hallway smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings, though she didn't believe in either. Downstairs, the doorman tipped his cap. "Morning, Agent Lewis," he said. "Just Amara," she corrected gently. "It's Saturday." He grinned. "You look like someone who never stops working." "Old habits," she said. Outside, the city pulsed with weekend life. Street vendors setting up stalls, kids on bicycles, a busker tuning his guitar. Normalcy had a way of returning even after the ugliest truths. That was both its mercy and its curse. She walked toward her car parked at the curb. On the windshield sat a folded newspaper, damp from the morning dew. The headline stretched across the top. "Justice served in Metro West trial. FBI agent's case sparks national reform." Beneath it was a photo of her leaving the courthouse months ago, hand raised to shield her face from the cameras. She hadn't realized then that someone had caught her smiling. She slid the paper into her bag and got into the car. The engine turned over with a low hum. From the radio, a local news anchor was reading updates on the sentencing. Former Lieutenant Mark Carver, once considered a rising star in the department, was sentenced today to 20 years in federal prison for orchestrating a pattern of false arrests and evidence tampering. Prosecutors credit FBI agent Amara Lewis for uncovering the operation. She switched the station. A jazz program filled the air instead, soft saxophone, lazy drums. It reminded her of her father, who used to play records on Sunday mornings. She could almost hear his voice saying, "Justice isn't about getting even, sweetheart. It's about getting it right." She drove through the city, past the courthouse, past the precinct that now bore a new sign, Community Accountability Office. And past the mural someone had painted on the brick wall beside it. It showed 3 raised hands, different shades of brown and white, breaking through chains. Beneath it, in small letters, someone had written, "Truth always finds a way." Traffic thinned as she crossed the bridge. The sun was climbing higher, burning the last traces of fog from the river. Her phone buzzed once with a new message. It was from Lila. "You going to D.C. or heading south first?" Amara typed back, "South. They always hide the worst things in the heat." She put the phone down and kept driving. Each mile felt like both an ending and a beginning, the road stretching forward, endless, uncertain, but hers to walk. When she reached the edge of the city, she pulled over for a moment. The skyline shimmered in the distance, towers of glass reflecting sunlight like silent witnesses. Somewhere behind those walls, people were still filing reports, writing denials, signing forms that would someday end up on her desk. She'd see them soon enough. She looked out across the open highway, wine tugging at her hair, and whispered to no one in particular, "Justice walks slow, but it never walks alone." The engine idled softly. She put the car back in gear and merged onto the highway, the city receding in her rearview mirror. Ahead, the horizon opened wide, bright, endless, waiting. And for the first time in years, Amara Lewis smiled, not because something was finished, but because something true was beginning.